The words hit me like a slap across the face as I stood in the doorway of what used to be my own home. "You need to know your place, Eleanor," Vanessa said, not even looking up from her phone as she lounged on my late husband's favorite leather chair. "This is our house now, and I won't have you barging in whenever you feel like it." I had driven over to drop off birthday gifts for my grandson Tommy, just like I had done every month for the past 3 years since my son Marcus had married this woman. But apparently, using my own key to enter the house I had gifted them was now considered barging in. Marcus sat silently on the couch, avoiding my eyes as his wife continued her lecture. "You raised your son already. Now it's time to step back and let us live our lives without your constant interference." My hands trembled as I set Tommy's presents on the table. The house I had bought and paid for, the home where I had planned to spend holidays with my family, had become hostile territory. Vanessa's cold eyes met mine with a challenge that made my blood run cold. "I think I understand perfectly," I said quietly, though inside I was already planning my response. The drive home felt endless as Vanessa's words echoed in my mind. "Know your place." After everything I had done for Marcus and his family, after gifting them a beautiful home worth over $500,000, I was being told to know my place like some unwelcome stranger. I had bought that house specifically so Marcus and Vanessa could start their marriage without financial stress. The deed was in both their names as a wedding gift, but I had paid every penny from my retirement savings and the insurance money from my husband's death. Back in my small apartment, I stared at the framed photo of Marcus as a little boy. Where was the sweet child who used to beg me to read him bedtime stories? When had he become a man who sat in silence while his wife disrespected the woman who had raised him? My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Mom, Vanessa was just having a bad day. You know how pregnancy hormones can be. Can we just forget this happened?" Pregnancy hormones. As if carrying a baby gave someone permission to be cruel to their mother-in-law. As if being pregnant justified telling me to know my place in my own gifted house. I turned off my phone without responding. Some things couldn't be forgotten or forgiven with a simple excuse. The next morning, I called my lawyer, Mr. Peterson, who had handled my husband's estate and the house transfer. His secretary put me through immediately when I mentioned it was urgent. "Eleanor, how can I help you today?" His familiar voice was reassuring after yesterday's humiliation. "I need to understand something about the house I gifted to Marcus and Vanessa. Are there any legal mechanisms that would allow me to reclaim it under certain circumstances?" There was a pause as he reviewed my file. "Actually, yes. The deed includes a morality clause that we added at your insistence. If the recipients engage in behavior that violates the spirit of the gift, ownership can revert to you." I had forgotten about that clause. Mr. Peterson had suggested it as protection against my gift being abused or misused. At the time, I thought it was unnecessary. Surely my own son would never treat me badly. What would constitute a violation? I asked, my heart beginning to race. Abuse of the grantor, failure to maintain the property, or using the gift to harm family relationships. Based on what you've told me about yesterday's incident, we might have grounds. I scheduled a meeting for the next day. Vanessa wanted me to know my place? I was about to show her exactly where she stood. Before taking legal action, I decided to give Marcus one chance to make things right. I invited him to lunch at our old favorite restaurant, the place where we used to celebrate his birthday every year before Vanessa decided I was too involved in their lives. Marcus looked uncomfortable from the moment he sat down, fidgeting with his napkin and avoiding eye contact. "Mom, about yesterday. Vanessa's really sorry. She's just stressed about the baby and everything." "Is she?" I asked calmly, because she seemed very clear about wanting me to know my place. "You have to understand, she grew up differently than us. Her family isn't as close. She doesn't understand our relationship." I studied my son's face, looking for any trace of the boy who used to defend me on the playground. "So you're saying it's acceptable for her to disrespect me in the house I bought for you?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably. "She's my wife, Mom. I have to support her. Maybe you could try calling before you come over." The betrayal was complete. My own son was choosing his wife's cruelty over basic respect for his mother. He was asking me to beg permission to visit the house I had gifted them out of love. "I see," I said, reaching for my purse. Thank you for clarifying where your loyalties lie. That afternoon, I sat in Mr. Peterson's office reviewing the original deed and gift documents. The morality clause was clearly written in legal language that I hadn't fully understood 3 years ago, but now it looked like a lifeline. The clause specifically mentions that the gift was made, in the spirit of family unity and mutual respect, Mr. Peterson explained. Vanessa's behavior yesterday, witnessed by you and occurring in the gifted property, constitutes a clear violation. What exactly can we do? I asked, feeling hope for the first time since yesterday's humiliation. We can file for reversion of the deed based on breach of the gift conditions. Given that you have witnesses to her disrespectful behavior and Marcus's failure to defend the spirit of the gift, we have a strong case. I thought about Marcus's weak excuses at lunch, his willingness to throw me under the bus to keep his wife happy. What about my son? He's on the deed too. His passive participation in violating the gift conditions makes him equally liable. The law doesn't distinguish between active cruelty and enabling it. I signed the papers to begin legal proceedings. Vanessa wanted me to know my place. She was about to learn that my place was wherever I decided it should be. While the legal paperwork was being filed, I decided to do some investigating of my own. Vanessa had always been secretive about her background, claiming her family lived far away and weren't close. But something about her attitude suggested this wasn't her first time manipulating family dynamics. I hired a private investigator, something I never thought I would need to do to protect myself from my own family. Within a week, the results were eye-opening and disturbing. Vanessa had a pattern. Her previous long-term relationship had ended when she convinced her ex-boyfriend to put her name on his apartment lease, then had him evicted for domestic issues that mysteriously appeared right after the paperwork was signed. Before that, she had lived with an elderly woman who had gifted her a car and money, only to cut contact with Vanessa after discovering missing jewelry and forged checks. She's a professional manipulator, the investigator explained during our meeting. She identifies vulnerable people with assets and slowly isolates them from support systems while gaining control of their resources. I stared at the photos and documents spread across the table. My son hadn't married a woman with trust issues. He had married a predator who saw our family as her next mark. The legal papers were served to Marcus and Vanessa on a Thursday morning while I watched from my car across the street. Marcus came to the door in his bathrobe, clearly shocked by the official documents. I could see Vanessa in the background, her face twisted with rage as she read over his shoulder. Within an hour, my phone was ringing with Marcus's panicked voice. Mom, what is this? A lawsuit? Are you seriously trying to take our house? I'm reclaiming the house I gifted to you under false pretenses, I replied calmly. Vanessa made it very clear that I'm not welcome in my own gift. That house is legally ours, and no senile old lady is going to take it from me. When she finally left, I had 20 minutes of video evidence showing her harassment, threats, and verbal abuse. Mr. Peterson was going to love this footage. The next day, I filed for a restraining order based on her threatening behavior. Vanessa wanted to play hardball? I had been handling difficult people longer than she had been alive. Marcus called later that night, his voice broken and ashamed. Mom, I'm so sorry about Vanessa. She's not thinking clearly because of the pregnancy stress. Stop making excuses for her, Marcus. This is who she really is. The court hearing for the restraining order was scheduled for the following week. I arrived early, dressed professionally, and carrying a folder of evidence that would expose Vanessa's pattern of manipulation and abuse. Vanessa showed up late, her hair disheveled and her clothes wrinkled, looking exactly like the unstable person she had revealed herself to be. Marcus sat beside her, his shoulders slumped in defeat. When the judge asked for my evidence, I presented the security footage of Vanessa's screaming tantrum at my apartment, along with the investigator's report about her history of financial manipulation. Your Honor, I said calmly, the defendant has a documented pattern of targeting vulnerable people for their assets, then becoming abusive when challenged. Her behavior toward me is part of a larger scheme to isolate my son from his family, while controlling his finances. Vanessa jumped to her feet, her face red with anger. That's a lie. She's just a controlling mother who can't let go. The judge's expression grew stern. "Ma'am, please remain seated and let your attorney speak for you." But Vanessa couldn't control herself. "She gave us that house as a gift. You can't just take back gifts because you change your mind." Her outburst was perfect. She had just confirmed that she viewed my gift as irrevocable, regardless of how she treated me. The restraining order was granted immediately. Vanessa was prohibited from coming within 500 feet of my residence or workplace, and all contact had to go through attorneys. More importantly, the judge's comments during the hearing made it clear that my lawsuit to reclaim the house had merit. "Mrs. Patterson," the judge had said, "gifts given in good faith with specific conditions can indeed be revoked when those conditions are violated. The evidence suggests that your daughter-in-law's behavior constitutes such a violation." Marcus waited for me outside the courthouse, his face pale and drawn. "Mom, please. Can we talk about this privately?" I looked at my son. This man who had chosen to enable his wife's abuse rather than defend his mother. "What would you like to say, Marcus? I love you. I never wanted things to get this bad. But Vanessa is carrying my child. I can't just abandon her because you two don't get along." "This isn't about getting along," I replied firmly. "This is about respect and basic human decency. Your wife told me to know my place in a house I bought for you. She screamed at me in my own apartment building. This isn't a personality conflict, it's abuse." Marcus's voice broke. "What do you want me to do? Choose between my wife and my mother? I want you to be a man who doesn't tolerate anyone treating his mother like garbage. But apparently, that's too much to ask." The main lawsuit to reclaim the house moved forward quickly. Mr. Peterson filed for immediate possession based on the documented violations of the gift conditions, and the court scheduled a hearing within 30 days. During this time, I learned more disturbing information about Vanessa's behavior. My neighbors reported that she had been driving by my apartment building several times a day, despite the restraining order. She was also posting about me on social media, calling me a psychotic mother-in-law, and seeking sympathy for her situation. The social media posts were a gift to my legal case. In them, Vanessa admitted that she had told me to stay in my lane and mind my own business regarding the house. She portrayed herself as the victim of an overbearing mother-in-law, but her own words confirmed my allegations about her disrespectful behavior. Marcus tried to convince her to delete the posts, but Vanessa was too angry to think strategically. Every public rant she made strengthened my position. "She's digging her own grave," Mr. Peterson observed during one of our meetings. "The court will see exactly what kind of person she is through her own words." I felt no satisfaction in watching my son's marriage implode, but I couldn't allow Vanessa's abuse to continue unchallenged. 2 weeks before the court hearing, Marcus made one final attempt at reconciliation. He showed up at my apartment on a Sunday morning, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Mom, Vanessa is willing to apologize. She wants to start over and try to build a better relationship with you." I let him in but remained standing, making it clear this would be a short conversation. "Where is this apology?" "She's waiting in the car. She was afraid you might call the police if she came to your door." Smart of her, considering the restraining order. "But I'm not interested in her apologies, Marcus. Apologies don't undo the damage she's caused." Marcus ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "So what, you're just going to take our house and destroy my family? I'm reclaiming property that was gifted under conditions that were violated. The destruction of your family is entirely Vanessa's doing. The baby will be here in 4 months. Where are we supposed to live?" I felt a pang of sadness for my unborn grandchild, but I couldn't let emotional manipulation change my course. "You should have thought about that before you allowed your wife to abuse me. Please, Mom. For the baby's sake. The baby would be better off away from a mother who teaches that disrespecting elders is acceptable behavior." The court hearing was held on a gray Tuesday morning in October. The courtroom was smaller than I had expected, but it felt like the center of the universe as Mr. Peterson presented our case to the judge. "Your Honor, Mrs. Patterson gifted this property to her son and daughter-in-law with the explicit understanding that it would strengthen family bonds and provide a foundation for their marriage. Instead, the defendants have used the gift as a weapon to isolate Mrs. Patterson from her family." He played audio recordings of Vanessa's screaming tantrum at my apartment, showed photos of her social media posts, and presented testimony from the private investigator about her history of financial manipulation. Vanessa's lawyer tried to argue that I was a controlling mother who couldn't accept my son's marriage, but the evidence was overwhelming. The judge's expression grew increasingly stern as she reviewed the documentation of Vanessa's behavior. "Mrs. Patterson," Vanessa's lawyer said during cross-examination, "isn't it true that you're using this lawsuit to punish your daughter-in-law for not accepting your interference in their marriage?" "No," y replica calmly. "I'm reclaiming property that was gifted in good faith to people who have proven unworthy of that trust." The judge nodded approvingly at my answer. The judge's ruling was swift and decisive. "Based on the evidence presented, I find that the defendants have violated the conditions under which the property was gifted. The deed clearly states that the gift was made to promote family unity and mutual respect." Vanessa jumped to her feet, her face purple with rage. "This is discrimination. You can't punish a pregnant woman for standing up to a controlling mother-in-law." The realization and regret in his eyes were genuine, not manipulated or coached by his wife. "Marcus, I never wanted to hurt you, but I couldn't allow Vanessa's abuse to continue unchallenged. I understand that now. She's not the person I thought I married. The pregnancy has made everything worse, but honestly, the signs were there before." "What will you do now?" "We're moving in with her sister temporarily. I'm hoping some distance from this situation will help us figure things out. Maybe couples counseling." I wanted to tell him that counseling wouldn't fix someone like Vanessa, but he would have to learn that lesson himself. The house was officially empty on November 15th. I walked through the rooms that had been my gift to my son, now reclaimed through necessity and legal action. The damage Vanessa had caused would cost thousands to repair, but the house was structurally sound. Standing in the living room where Vanessa had told me to know my place, I felt a complex mixture of sadness and vindication. This wasn't how I had imagined my son's marriage would unfold, but I had protected my dignity and set boundaries that should have existed from the beginning. The local newspaper picked up the story, running a headline that read, "Grandmother reclaims gifted home after daughter-in-law's abuse." The article portrayed me sympathetically, describing how I had been forced to take legal action to protect myself from family members who had abused my generosity. Vanessa tried to spin the story on social media, claiming she was the victim of an evil mother-in-law's revenge plot. But her own documented behavior undermined any sympathy she might have garnered. People in the community began reaching out to me with their own stories of ungrateful family members and manipulative in-laws. 3 months later, I had renovated the house and turned it into something completely new. Instead of a family home that had become a battleground, it was now a sanctuary that reflected my own taste and values. I converted the master bedroom into an art studio where I could pursue the painting hobby I had abandoned years ago to focus on raising Marcus. The living room became a peaceful reading space filled with books and comfortable furniture. Most importantly, I had installed a security system that would prevent anyone from making me feel unsafe in my own home again. Marcus called occasionally, always sounding tired and stressed. Vanessa had become increasingly controlling and paranoid since losing the house. She accused him of secretly staying in contact with me and threatened to leave him if he didn't choose between his wife and his mother. "She's making me choose," he told me during one late-night phone call. "She says if I have any relationship with you, she'll take the baby and disappear." "I'm sorry, Marcus. But you have to understand that this is who she really is. The pregnancy didn't make her cruel, it just revealed her true nature." The baby was born in February, a healthy daughter that Marcus named Hope. He sent me a single photo through a mutual friend, knowing that direct contact would trigger another explosion from Vanessa. Looking at my granddaughter's tiny face, I felt the familiar ache of family bonds that had been severed by someone else's cruelty. This child would grow up not knowing her grandmother because her mother couldn't tolerate any relationship that might challenge her control over Marcus. But I had learned that I couldn't sacrifice my own well-being to maintain relationships with people who didn't respect basic boundaries. Some prices were too high to pay, even for family. 6 months after Hope's birth, Marcus called with devastating news. "Vanessa left me. She took Hope and moved back to her hometown. She says I'll never see my daughter again unless I completely cut ties with you. The ultimatum was final proof of Vanessa's true character. She was willing to destroy her own child's relationship with her father, rather than allow me any place in their lives. I'm sorry, son, but maybe this is for the best. Hope deserves better than growing up in a home filled with manipulation and control. A year after reclaiming my house, I had built a completely new life. The art studio was productive, and I had even sold several paintings to local galleries. The peace of living without constant drama and manipulation was transformative. Marcus had begun divorce proceedings, though Vanessa was fighting him at every step. She refused to allow visitation with Hope, and was demanding massive financial settlements despite having contributed nothing to their marriage. She's trying to get half of everything, including the house she thinks we still own. Marcus told me during one of our slowly rebuilding conversations. What did you tell your lawyer? The truth. That the house was yours and she never had any legal claim to it. Her lawyer was not happy to discover that their biggest asset had already been reclaimed. Vanessa's greed had backfired spectacularly. By being so focused on controlling me and isolating Marcus, she had destroyed her own financial security. The private investigators' report about her previous cons had been shared with Marcus's divorce attorney, creating a pattern of evidence that would prevent her from claiming innocent victim status. The divorce was finalized 18 months after I reclaimed the house. Marcus was awarded joint custody of Hope, though Vanessa continued to make visitation difficult through constant legal challenges and emotional manipulation. During Hope's first visit to my house, she was 18 months old and walking. Watching her toddle around the rooms where her father had played as a child felt like a small miracle after everything we had endured. She looks like you did at that age, I told Marcus as we watched Hope explore the art studio. I'm sorry it took so long for you to meet her. Vanessa made everything so complicated. You were trying to keep your family together. I understand that, even if I didn't agree with your methods. Marcus had matured significantly through the ordeal. The weak man who had enabled his wife's abuse had been replaced by someone who was learning to set boundaries and protect the people he loved. I should have defended you from the beginning, he said quietly. I was so afraid of losing Vanessa that I lost sight of who I was. 2 years after the court victory, I received an unexpected visitor. Vanessa stood on my doorstep, looking older and more worn than I remembered. Her previous arrogance had been replaced by something that might have been desperation. Mrs. Patterson, I need to talk to you about Hope, she said, her voice lacking its former authority. You have 5 minutes. And you're staying on the porch. I know you hate me and I understand why. But Hope needs stability, and I can't provide that for her right now. I studied her face, looking for signs of manipulation or hidden agendas. What are you asking me? I want Marcus to have primary custody. I know you'll help him take care of her, and she deserves that stability. The admission must have cost her enormous pride. The woman who had once told me to know my place was now acknowledging that I was better equipped to provide for her daughter than she was. This isn't about you, Vanessa. It's about what's best for Hope. I know. And what's best for her is being raised by people who put her needs first instead of their own egos. Marcus was shocked when I told him about Vanessa's offer to give him primary custody. Are you sure she meant it? She's been fighting me for 2 years about every little thing. I think she's finally realized that her need for control was hurting Hope more than anyone else. The custody transfer was handled through lawyers, with Vanessa agreeing to supervise visitation while Marcus and I shared the responsibility of raising Hope. It wasn't the family arrangement I had originally envisioned, but it was infinitely better than the toxic situation we had endured. Hope thrived in an environment free from constant conflict and manipulation. At 3 years old, she was bright, curious, and secure in the love of people who put her welfare above their own egos. She's going to grow up knowing that she's loved unconditionally, Marcus said as we watched her play in the garden. That's something I lost sight of during those dark years with Vanessa. Children need stability and respect, not drama and control games. The house that had once been a battlefield had become a sanctuary for healing. 5 years after telling me to know my place, Vanessa was living in a small apartment across town, working as a waitress and seeing Hope twice a month under supervised visitation. The woman who had once felt entitled to my $500,000 gift was now struggling to pay rent on a studio apartment. Her pattern of manipulation had finally caught up with her. The private investigator's report had been shared with other potential victims, and her reputation in the community was permanently damaged. Meanwhile, the house had become a gathering place for our slowly rebuilt family. Marcus had learned to be a strong father and son. Hope was flourishing in a stable environment, and I had reclaimed not just my property but my dignity and peace of mind. You know what's funny? Marcus said during one of our Sunday dinners. Vanessa always said you were controlling and manipulative. But she was describing herself. People often project their own behavior onto others. It's easier than admitting their own flaws. Hope, now 5 years old, had no memory of the chaos that had preceded her stable life. She knew her mother but considered the house her primary home, the place where she felt safest and most loved. 7 years after that terrible day when Vanessa told me to know my place, I sat in my garden watching Hope help Marcus plant flowers. The house that had once been stolen from me through manipulation and abuse had become the foundation for a healthier family. Hope was 7 now, bright and confident, with no awareness of the legal battles that had shaped her early years. She knew she was loved by her father and grandmother, and that was enough. Vanessa rarely visited anymore. The supervised visitation had become increasingly awkward as Hope showed little interest in spending time with someone who felt like a stranger. The bonds that matter are built through consistent love and presence, not legal documents or genetic connections. Grandma, why do you have so many pictures of Daddy when he was little? Hope asked, browsing through photo albums in the living room. Because every moment with the people you love is worth remembering, I replied, thinking about how close we had come to losing each other completely. Marcus had grown into a man I was proud of, someone who had learned from his mistakes and chosen love over fear. The house that Vanessa had tried to claim through cruelty had become a symbol of what families could accomplish when they prioritized respect and genuine care over control and manipulation. Vanessa had wanted me to know my place. Now she was living in the consequences of her own choices, while I was living in the home where I belonged, surrounded by people who understood that true family is built on love, not entitlement.